She said she just needed time. I said I'd wait. I waited through 3 birthdays, 2 hospital bills, and a mountain of debt I didn't know wasn't mine. I thought I was building a life with her. Turns out, I was just buying her silence. And now I'm 58, broke, and alone in a city I moved across the world for, still hoping the next knock on the door will be hers. Those words echoed in my head again just a few nights ago when I opened an email from one of you. It wasn't from her, it wasn't tied to the pain she left behind. It was from a longtime viewer of this channel, someone who's been quietly following, listening, and carrying his own story in silence. He told me he'd never had the courage to write before, but after watching week after week, he finally wanted to share what happened to him. As I read his message, my emotions shifted in waves. At first I felt that same old ache, the one that tightens my chest whenever I think about the years I gave away. Then, as I read further, I felt anger. Not at him, but at the pattern how so many of us end up trapped in the same cycle of trust, sacrifice, and betrayal. But then something unexpected happened. By the time I reached the end, the anger softened into something else. Connection. Relief. A quiet gratitude that, even in our worst mistakes, we aren't as alone as we think. So before I take you any deeper into this story, let me pause for a moment. If these confessions resonate with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. And tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Whether you're in Manila, Manchester, or Melbourne, your presence here matters more than you know. To everyone who keeps coming back, week after week, I want to give a special thank you. A super thank you. You've turned my loneliness into something I can share, and every time you comment or reach out, it reminds me that these stories are worth telling. Let me take you back to where it all started. I remember the exact moment she said yes. We were sitting in that sleek cafe near Chulalongkorn University, the one with the glass walls and overpriced lattes that cost more than most Thai people make in a day. Her hands wrapped around her iced coffee like she was trying to warm herself despite the Bangkok heat. "Okay," she whispered, not looking at me. Her voice so soft I had to lean forward to hear her over the air conditioning. "I'll be your girlfriend." My heart nearly exploded in my chest. 4 months I'd been chasing this moment. 4 months of careful conversations, respectful distance, proving I wasn't like the other foreign men she'd met in bars or on dating apps. "Are you sure?" I asked, reaching across the table, my hand trembling slightly as I touched her fingers. She finally looked up, those dark eyes soft and uncertain, like a deer caught in headlights. "You're different, P. Dave. You make me feel safe." Safe. That word hit me harder than any love confession could have. I'd spent my entire adult life making people feel safe, first as a postal inspector tracking down mail fraud, then as a father protecting my daughter from everything the world could throw at her. "I promise I'll take care of you," I said, meaning every syllable, my voice thick with emotion I hadn't felt since Sarah was alive. She smiled then, small and shy, like she was testing out the expression. "I know you will." The way she said it, like she'd been waiting her whole life for someone to make that promise. I paid for both our drinks, walked her to the campus gate, and kissed her forehead goodnight. My first kiss in Bangkok. My first real hope in 5 years since the accident that took my daughter and destroyed my marriage. That milk tea shop is where it all started, 6 months before that cafe conversation. I'd been walking the same route every morning, trying to adjust to the heat, the noise, the complete upheaval of moving my life halfway across the world. San Diego to Bangkok at 57. My sister called it a midlife crisis when I told her I was selling everything and moving to Thailand. I called it survival. After Sarah died in that car accident on Interstate 8, after my wife blamed me for not picking her up that night, after watching my pension shrink and my house feel like a tomb filled with memories I couldn't escape, I needed something different. Thailand seemed far enough away from everything that hurt. The milk tea shop sat on the corner of Rama 4 and Siloam, small and bright yellow, always busy with university students chattering in Thai and broken English. She worked the afternoon shift, always polite when I ordered my usual green tea with less sugar. "Hello, Kun Dave," she'd say in that careful English, pronouncing each word like she'd practiced it. I started bringing my camera, a Canon I'd bought years ago but rarely used, taking pictures of the street vendors, the Buddhist temple across the road, the organized chaos of Bangkok traffic. One day she asked to see the photos, leaning over the counter with genuine curiosity. "You have good eye," she said, scrolling through my gallery, pausing on a shot of an elderly woman selling flowers. "Very beautiful. My name is Elisa." The way she said it, like she was giving me something precious, something she didn't share with every customer. We started texting that night. Nothing romantic at first, just friendly conversations about photography, about her business administration classes, about how different America must be from Thailand. She was cautious, never available for lunch, always busy with school or family obligations. But she was kind in ways that reminded me of Sarah. When I mentioned missing my daughter's birthday, she sent me a photo of a lit candle with the message, "For remembering her light." That simple gesture broke something open in my chest. Sarah would have been 28 that day if she'd lived. The money started so innocently, I didn't even recognize it as the beginning of the end. We'd been officially dating for 3 weeks when she mentioned her scholarship being delayed by university bureaucracy. "Don't worry about it," I said over dinner at a small restaurant in Siloam, watching her pick at her pad thai like she'd lost her appetite. She shook her head, those expressive eyes filling with frustrated tears. "I might have to drop out this semester. My parents already borrowed so much for my education." The thought of her dreams being crushed over something as stupid as money made my chest tight with familiar helplessness. "How much do you need?" I asked, reaching across the table to touch her hand. She looked startled, like the question was inappropriate. "No, Padev, I can't ask that of you. We barely know each other." But I insisted, and she finally admitted it. 80,000 baht for tuition. About $2,400. I had it in my savings, money I'd planned to stretch over the entire year while I figured out my new life in Bangkok. "Are you sure?" she asked, tears forming again, making her eyes shine in the restaurant's dim lighting. "You don't even know me that well. What if I disappoint you?" But I did know her, or thought I did. I knew she studied until midnight every night, that she sent half her part-time earnings to her family in rural Isan, that she'd never ask me for anything before this moment of vulnerability. "Let me help," I said, transferring the money that night from my phone while she watched in amazement. She hugged me so tight I could feel her heartbeat against my chest, rapid and grateful. "No one has ever been so kind to me," she whispered into my shirt. "You're like an angel sent from heaven." That made it worth every baht. 2 weeks later, her grandmother fell critically ill. Another 45,000 for the hospital in Udon Thani. "She raised me when my parents couldn't afford to," Elisa explained, crying softly in my apartment. "She taught me English, helped me dream of university. I can't let her die because of money." Then her mother needed emergency surgery for gallbladder problems. 60,000 more. Each time, she hesitated, clearly ashamed to ask. Each time I insisted it was no problem, that this was what people did for each other. "Family is everything," I told her, remembering how helpless I'd felt when Sarah was dying in that hospital and money couldn't fix crushed organs and internal bleeding. But maybe here, with Elisa, money could fix something. Maybe it could build something beautiful from the ashes of my old life. The apartment in Ratchada should have been our fresh start together. Elisa found it through her connections, negotiated the lease in Thai, even picked out most of the furniture from second-hand shops in Chatuchak Market. "You trust me to make it nice?" she asked, scrolling through photos on her phone, showing me options for curtains and kitchen supplies. Trust her? I would have moved into a cardboard box under a bridge if she'd asked me to. It was a decent place, 1 bedroom with air conditioning that actually worked, a small but functional kitchen, close to the MRT station for easy transportation. Perfect for a couple starting over, building something new together. But she never stayed overnight, not once in our first 2 months of living there. My mother wouldn't understand, she explained when I brought it up after yet another evening of her leaving at exactly 10 o'clock. Thai families are very traditional about unmarried couples. She already thinks I'm too Western, too independent. I respected that cultural difference, even though it left me alone most evenings, watching Thai soap operas I couldn't understand and wondering if this was normal. She'd visit after her afternoon classes, sometimes cook simple meals like fried rice or som tam, laugh at my clumsy attempts to use chopsticks properly, practice her English by telling me about her professors and classmates. But always, She'd check her phone at 9:30 and start gathering her things. "I have to catch the last train," she'd say, kissing my cheek goodbye. I told myself it was cultural, that I needed to be patient with customs I didn't understand. We weren't in America anymore, where couples moved in together after a few dates. Then I started noticing things that didn't fit her careful explanations. A pair of men's sneakers by the door one afternoon when I came back from grocery shopping at Big C. Size 42, much bigger than my American size 9 feet. "My cousin left them," she said when I asked, not looking up from her textbook spread across my kitchen table. "He fixes my computer sometimes, brings his own slippers to be comfortable." A brand new iPhone 14 Pro she'd never mentioned, still in its box on the kitchen counter, price tag showing 40,000 baht. "My friend upgraded to the newest model, gave me her old one," she explained when she caught me staring. But it wasn't old. The manufacturing date showed it was only 2 weeks from the factory. Late-night phone calls she took in the bathroom, speaking rapid Thai in hushed tones I couldn't understand even with my basic vocabulary. When I asked who called so late, she'd say it was her mother, worried about her grades or her safety in Bangkok, but her voice sounded different after those calls, distant, nervous, like she was somewhere else entirely, living a life I wasn't part of. I started second-guessing every detail, every explanation, feeling like a jealous fool but unable to stop myself. Was I being paranoid? Was this normal relationship anxiety, or was I finally seeing clearly for the first time in months? The debt confession came on a Tuesday night in November, during the brief cool season when Bangkok's heat finally becomes bearable. I was reading a detective novel on the couch, trying to lose myself in someone else's problems, when I heard her key in the door. She looked exhausted, her usually neat appearance disheveled, her eyes red and puffy like she'd been crying for hours. "Dave," she said, collapsing beside me on the couch, her whole body shaking with exhaustion or fear. "I need to tell you something terrible." My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. This was it, the conversation I'd been dreading for weeks. She was going to break up with me, tell me she'd found someone younger, someone who understood Thailand better, someone who didn't ask so many questions. Instead, she started crying. Deep, painful sobs that shook her whole body, the kind of crying that comes from a place so deep it hurts to witness. "I owe money," she whispered between ragged breaths. "A lot of money. More than I can ever pay back on my own." The story came out slowly, interrupted by more tears and long pauses where she seemed to gather courage. Her father had gambling problems, serious ones involving underground casinos in Isan, where desperate farmers bet their land and livestock on card games and cockfights. She'd co-signed a loan from a private lender, trying to help her family avoid the kind of violence that came when you couldn't pay what you owed to dangerous people. Now they were demanding payment with interest that had tripled the original amount, threatening her family, making it clear that pretty young daughters were valuable commodities when cash wasn't available. 150,000 baht. About $4,500. My entire emergency fund. The money I'd planned to live on if something went wrong with my pension. "They showed up at my mother's house yesterday," she said, her voice breaking like glass. "They know where I live, where I study, what time I leave for work. I'm so scared, Dave. They said they'd take me to work in Pattaya if I can't pay." The fear in her eyes looked absolutely real. The trembling in her hands felt genuine when I took them in mine. "I'm so ashamed," she continued, not looking at me, staring at the floor like she couldn't bear to see my reaction. "I never wanted to burden you with this. You've already done so much for me." Burden me? This was what relationships were for, wasn't it? Supporting each other through the worst life could throw at you? "We'll figure it out," I said, holding her close, feeling her heart racing against my chest like a trapped bird. "How much do you need right now to make them go away?" I transferred the money that same night, watching my savings account drain to almost nothing, but feeling like a hero doing it. She kissed my cheek, whispered thank you over and over like a prayer. But something felt different this time. The gratitude felt rehearsed, like lines from a play she'd performed before for other audiences. A month later she came to me again with the same desperate tears. More debt. Another creditor. Another family emergency. Another 80,000 baht. "This is absolutely the last time," she promised, tears flowing like a river, soaking my shirt as she clung to me. After this, we'll be free to be happy together. I'll move in here properly. We can start planning our future. I borrowed against my pension to make the transfer, signing papers I barely understood, committing to payments that would stretch for years. When I checked her phone while she was showering, curiosity finally overwhelming the trust I'd been desperately clinging to, I saw messages in Thai with names I didn't recognize. Mentions of other amounts, other deadlines, other farangs, screenshots of bank transfers that didn't match the amounts or dates she'd told me about. "You don't trust me?" she asked when I tried to bring it up the next morning, her voice sharp with hurt and something that looked like panic. After everything we've been through together, the pain in her eyes made me feel like a monster for doubting her, but the doubt was eating me alive from the inside. The distance started so gradually I almost missed it, like watching someone you love slowly fade away. Shorter text messages where paragraphs of affection used to be, canceled dinners with increasingly vague excuses. "I'm studying for final exams," she'd say. Or "family emergency in Isan, have to go help." When we did manage to meet, she seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly, responding to messages with quick thumbs while I tried to tell her about my day or ask about hers. I'd ask how her classes were going and get one-word answers. "Fine. Busy. Tired." She stopped staying for dinner, stopped asking about my photography hobby, stopped laughing at my terrible attempts at Thai pronunciation that used to make her giggle until her sides hurt. The little intimacies that had made me feel loved and needed disappeared one by one like lights going out in a house. No more hand-holding during the movies we'd watch on my laptop. No more cooking together on weekends. Her teaching me to make proper pad krapao while I burned the garlic and made her laugh. No more falling asleep on my couch during late-night study sessions, curled up with her textbooks like a cat in the Sunday. One afternoon in December, desperate to reconnect with the girl I'd fallen in love with, I decided to surprise her at campus with lunch from her favorite restaurant near Siam Square. The security guard at the main entrance looked confused when I mentioned her name and student ID number that I'd memorized like a prayer. "Elisa Jindarat? She hasn't been enrolled here for 2 semesters, he said in careful English, checking his computer screen twice to be sure. "Are you certain you have the correct person and university?" My blood went cold. My hands started shaking so badly I had to grip the information counter for support. When I confronted her that evening, showing up at her dorm building unannounced for the first time, she broke down again, but this time the tears felt different. Calculated. Mechanical. "It's a mistake in their computer system," she sobbed, not quite meeting my eyes. "I've been fighting with the administration for weeks. They lost my paperwork during a system upgrade. It's corruption, pure corruption." But her explanation didn't match the security guard's certainty or the way she avoided my direct questions. "Why would they completely remove you from their records?" I pressed, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "Why haven't you mentioned this problem before if it's been going on for weeks?" "Because they want more money," she snapped, then immediately looked sorry for raising her voice. "The whole system is designed to squeeze students for bribes, Padev. Everything in Thailand is falling apart." I wanted to believe her. God in heaven, how desperately I wanted to believe her, to go back to the simple faith I'd had just hours earlier. But when I tried calling the next day to suggest we go to the registrar's office together to sort out this supposed mistake, she didn't answer. 3 days of straight voicemail, my messages getting more desperate and pathetic with each attempt. When she finally picked up on the 4th day, her voice was flat, distant, like she was reading from a script. "I need some space from this relationship," she said without preamble. "Space from what?" I asked, panic rising in my throat like bile. "From us. From all of this pressure and suspicion." Pressure. As if loving her, supporting her, caring about her life and her problems was some kind of burden too heavy to bear. "Is there someone else?" The question came out before I could stop it, desperate and humiliating. She hung up without answering, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. Tom found me at a bar in Thonglor 2 weeks later, drunk and staring at my phone like it might suddenly ring with her voice on the other end. "You look like hell, mate," he said, sliding onto the bar stool beside me, his Australian accent thick with concern. Tom was maybe 45, one of those expats who'd been in Bangkok forever, working in tech consulting and living the perpetual bachelor life that I'd once envied. We'd met briefly at a pub quiz months earlier when I was still new to the city and optimistic about my future. "Girl troubles?" he asked, ordering us both another round of Chang beer, the cheap local stuff that tasted like water and regret. I told him everything. About Elisa, about the debt that kept growing, about the sudden disappearance that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love. He listened without judgment, nodding at all the right places, buying round after round as my story got darker and more pathetic. Then he said something that destroyed me completely. "Elisa, you said? Pretty girl, about 23, studies at Chula, works at that milk tea place on Rama IV?" My heart stopped beating for a full second. The bar noise faded to white static. "You know her?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Tom took a long sip of his beer, suddenly looking uncomfortable, like he'd realized he'd stepped into something much worse than typical expat heartbreak. "Dated her about 2 years ago," he said carefully. "Sweet girl, don't get me wrong, but she's got a system, mate. Finds decent blokes like us, lonely guys with savings accounts, keeps them around till the money runs dry, then moves on to the next target." The bar spun around me like a carnival ride. The floor felt unsteady beneath my feet. "That can't be right," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew it was. The delayed scholarship that never got resolved. The family emergencies that came with perfect timing whenever my bank account recovered. The debt that kept growing like a cancer. The careful way she'd never introduced me to friends or family, never let me into her real world. "She did the same thing to my friend Marcus before me," Tom continued, oblivious to the fact that he was shattering what was left of my world with each casual word. "Australian guy, worked for an oil company. Then there was a German fellow after me, some kind of engineer, and probably some poor bastard after him before she found you. It's not personal, mate, it's just business. A very profitable business. I wanted to punch him, to defend her honor, to prove him wrong with passionate arguments about real love and genuine connection. Instead, I ordered another drink and tried not to vomit on the bar. Every memory felt poisoned now, contaminated by this new knowledge. Every sweet moment, every gentle touch, every whispered promise of love and forever. Had any of it been real? Or was I just the latest mark in her long line of lonely foreign men with open wallets and desperate hearts? "How much did she get you for?" Tom asked gently, his voice softer now that he realized the depth of my devastation. I couldn't even say the number out loud. It hung in the air between us like a shameful secret. I've been living on instant noodles and instant coffee for 3 months now, counting every baht like a miser. The money I'd saved for retirement, for travel, for maybe buying a small house somewhere peaceful where I could grow old with dignity, it's all gone. Transferred to accounts I'll never see again, spent on debts that probably never existed, funding a life that never included me as anything more than an ATM with feelings. My government pension covers rent and basic utilities, but barely. I had to cancel the photography classes I'd signed up for at the local community center. Stopped eating out entirely, something that hurt more than I expected in a country where street food is half the cultural experience. Stopped taking taxis or the BTS, started walking everywhere in the brutal heat, counting every 10 baht coin like it might be my last. My feet hurt constantly now from cheap shoes and long distances on concrete sidewalks. Some nights I lie in bed staring at the ceiling, doing the math over and over like somehow the numbers might change. Close to 400,000 baht total. Nearly 12,000 American dollars. Enough to live comfortably in Thailand for 2 full years if I'd been careful. Gone in 6 months of believing in love. But the money isn't even the worst part, not really. It's the loneliness that eats at you like acid. The way I still check my phone every morning when I wake up, hoping for her name on the screen with an explanation that makes sense of everything. The way I still take the long route to the market at Big C, walking past that milk tea shop, half hoping to see her behind the counter with that shy smile that made me believe in second chances. She's never there. The shop has new employees now, teenage girls who don't know my usual order, who look at me like just another aging foreign customer with nothing interesting to offer. The way I catch myself buying green tea instead of coffee at 7-Eleven, forgetting for just a moment that she's not coming back to share it with me. My sister calls from San Diego every week now, her voice thick with worry and barely concealed frustration. "There's nothing left for you there," she says, like Thailand is a disease I caught instead of a country I chose. Come back home where people love you, where you understand how things work. But she's wrong about there being nothing left. There's the memory of feeling needed again, of being someone's hero even if it was all an elaborate lie. There's the ghost of the man I thought I could become in this new place. The father figure, the provider, the protector of someone smaller and more vulnerable than myself. There's this apartment that still smells faintly like her perfume sometimes when the air conditioning isn't running, still has her favorite ceramic mug in the cabinet that I can't bring myself to throw away, still feels like maybe she might walk through that door with tears in her eyes and an explanation that makes everything okay again. Even knowing what I know now, understanding exactly how stupid and naive I was, part of me still hopes for that knock on the door, still hopes those early morning conversations were real, that somewhere beneath the calculated manipulation was a girl who actually cared about the broken American man with his camera and his careful attempts at Thai phrases that made her laugh. But hope is expensive, and I'm finally completely broke. In every way that matters, I'm financially and emotionally bankrupt. The truth sits in my chest now like a tumor, heavy and malignant and impossible to ignore. She never loved me, not even a little bit, not the way I loved her with desperate middle-aged intensity, not the way I needed to be loved after years of being alone with my grief. I was convenient, generous, and far from home, with no one to warn me about girls like her who turn loneliness into profit. I gave her my life savings, my trust, my desperate middle-aged heart that still believed in fairy tale endings, and she took it all with the practiced ease of a professional. The worst part is I can't even hate her properly, can't sustain the clean anger that might help me heal. When I think about those early mornings at the milk tea shop, the way her face lit up when she saw my photography, the careful way she pronounced my name like it was something precious, some pathetic part of me still believes it was real. Maybe for just a moment, maybe just at the very beginning before she sized up my bank account and my loneliness, she saw something in me worth caring about. Maybe when she sent me that photo of the lit candle for Sarah's birthday, there was genuine kindness behind the gesture. Or maybe I'm still the same naive fool who transferred 150,000 baht to a complete stranger because she cried prettily and called me P. Dave with that sweet accent that made my heart skip. I'll probably never know which version is true, and maybe that's the cruelest part of all. But I do know this with absolute certainty. I'm 58 years old, broke, and alone in a city that tolerates me, but will never accept me, still walking past places that remind me of a love that never existed except in my imagination, still checking my phone for messages that will never come, still hoping against hope that this is all a terrible misunderstanding that can somehow be fixed with the right words or the right gesture or the right amount of money. And somewhere in Bangkok tonight, in some other milk tea shop or university cafe, there's probably another lonely foreign man my age getting his first smile from a pretty girl who needs help with her tuition. The cycle continues like clockwork, and I can't even warn him without sounding like a bitter old fool. Because who wants to believe they're that stupid? Who wants to accept they're that desperate for love that they'll mistake a business transaction for romance? I didn't want to believe it, and look where that got me. Now I'm paying for that willful blindness one empty day at a time, in an apartment that was never really ours, in a city I moved to for someone who was never really mine.